So what I'd like to do is ask, and this is a lightning round, Kate, Davey, Knar, and Dave Poplar to respond each very briefly to just what you hear when you hear Joan at the beginning of this piece. So here's Joan Retallack introducing Not a Cage.
The next thing that I'm going to read is a poem dedicated to John Cage, which is called Not a Cage, which is based on first and last lines from books that I was discarding or selling or giving away. I think as a way of assuaging my guilt for not having read them. I collected the beginnings and the endings. Scientific, sorry, I have 2 copies of this book here. It's not all fitting. Scientific inquiry, seen in a very broad perspective, may see foot 1957, also Wettermark 1906, chapter 13. To man seek, the world is twofold, in accordance with that witness is now or in the future. It wasn't until the waitress brought her Benedictine and she, Villandry, les douves, Parazé, le rideau, mine, yours, Cynthia, not a building, this earth, not a cage, the artist, disciple, abundant, multiple, restless, a forgery, opus, Loonus, Bellini, we named you, I thought the earth is possible.
I love that poem. Okay, so Kate, Davey, Knar, and Dave, say something about what she's doing there or what you're thinking as you hear, especially the introduction.
Well, with that piece in particular, I'm thinking about how, her use of chanciness and, gestures at randomness make me want to make connections, like to figure out what all these texts are that she's discarded. What's the connection between them? Why is she getting rid of them? So sometimes chanciness just raises different questions, I guess, than the ones that are being pulled apart.
Yeah, that's great. And you're hinting at our guest that she has a different attitude toward each of the books. She probably doesn't even know exactly why she's getting rid of any individual book because it's just a big stack. Some she looks and longingly says, I'm just never going to have time to read that book, but I really would like to. And another is, this is a novel I bought when I thought I really wanted to read novels, but I don't like novels, or something like that. So Kate, follow up. What is our work? What do we do when hearing this piece? What's our role?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a lot of this work is trying to resist the mind's and the language that informs the mind's desire to make connections. It's trying to foil that that want and that automatic impulse of the mind. But my mind just wants to make new and different connections.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It both illuminates that want for connectivity and, I don't know, I guess reroutes it to a degree.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Davey, quick thought on this?
Sure. The thought that it occurs to me to have is actually putting this in dialogue with something that Gabby was saying a minute ago about what we think randomness is in the Week 9 poems, and that the constraint that Retallack has of the first and last lines from books that she's discarding, those books aren't there randomly. Those books are instances of wanting to be in a certain kind of relation, of wanting to have a certain kind of vocabulary, of wanting to have a certain kind of shared text with others who have read the same book, but never getting there, of having a desire that is, never gets realized, if the desire is to read something, to have read something. And that's a helpful way of maybe reframing some of the conversation that we have around the Week 9 poems, is to think about maybe not exactly about randomness, but about variation within a defined set of parameters, where we might pay as much attention to the defined set of parameters, the leaflets that Jenna Osman is engaging with, the why those are the books that Joan Retallack owns, and why those are the books that she's discarding, where the parameters of the constraint within which randomness occurs produces a certain kind of relation, and we might temper our interest in thinking about a kind of expansive randomness by thinking about how the field of randomness is defined.
Great, Davey. Thank you so much. Kanar?
Yeah. So I guess one thing I'm thinking about here, it has to do with, what exactly is it to be kind of present, to be kind of inhabiting the present, the present, and sort of to do so in a way that might yield different possibilities, right? Ones that are less of the kind of hegemonic structures that we already know. And, taking these elements from beginnings and endings, it's like, you end up with this composite document of these kind of threshold moments in texts that are kind of hingy, and you don't quite know the relation to them, and you're kind of asked to do things with them in this very kind of present way. And I guess, I don't know, I think it's a really interesting kind of poem to read, and maybe even to try and do oneself, to kind of follow that procedure, and to think about, what kinds of connections sort of bloom from disconnects of varying sorts, and what kinds of triggers can allow our minds to move to places maybe they wouldn't otherwise move to.
Thank you, Kanar. Okay, Dave?
I love that this is a poem born from guilt. I think that's kind of funny. It's funny that the point of it isn't about the substance of these books as much as it's giving away something, because it's almost recognizing how there's something about collecting books, and that represents something. It's like a symbolic thing that's maybe even separate from their content, like even just showing off bookcases. I mean, I've even seen like some people set up their Zoom camera in front of books to make it look impressive or something like that. It's really weird that people do that.
Present company accepted.
And this poem seems to sort of almost commemorate that symbolism of this, that's also overtly separated from the actual content of the books. By taking the first line and the last line, symbolically, you're getting as far away from the content. You're taking the pieces of bread, not the sandwich inside. You're taking that and making that the poem. So it's almost like a meta appreciation of the symbolism that is separate from the actual underlying content.